My name's Daniel Foster. I'm 42 years old, live in a mid-sized town in Indiana, and if you ever find yourself needing a guy to replace your water heater or rewire a busted garage door opener on short notice, I'm probably already in your contacts. I run my own handyman business, drive a beat-up silver Ford F-150 with the logo slapped on the doors, and for the past 11 years, I've been married to a woman named Nancy Foster, a former high school English teacher turned middle school counselor. Smart, poised, sharp tongue, sharper eyes. Everyone always said she was out of my league. Which, yeah, thanks. I know. If you looked at us from the outside, you'd think we had it all figured out. No kids, by choice. One of those modern couples that like their independence, as Nancy's friends would put it. We bought a 3-bedroom ranch-style house in a quiet neighborhood with a decent backyard and enough room for her lemon tree obsession and my overgrown tool shed. We hosted board game nights, barbecues, even a few Halloween costume parties. People liked us. We were the couple you could call at midnight for a ride home or a bottle of wine, depending on your emergency. And I was in it. All in. Not the kind of in where you post heart emojis under each other's Facebook photos. No, that's performative crap. But the kind where you memorize the exact way she takes her coffee, half a sugar, splash of almond milk, microwave for 12 seconds because it's always too damn cold. And she remembers to pick up the exact right drill bits you like from Lowe's without needing to ask. But I'm not telling you this so you can admire our love story. I'm telling you this because every bit of it, the comfort, the routines, the inside jokes, the familiar weight of her leaning against me during Netflix binges, was the setup. The calm before the gut punch. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't wear a cape or announce itself with sirens. It shows up in quiet ways. A pause in a sentence. A glance that doesn't land. A missed birthday text from someone who never forgets. Nancy was never the dramatic type. No slammed doors, no teary-eyed accusations, no yelling matches. She knew how to keep the peace. That's what made it all so perfectly nauseating. It started, like most slow death stories do, with the little things. She stopped texting me during the day. I used to get these random updates. Kid threw up in the hallway. Day's off to a great start. Or, saw a student quote The Great Gatsby, and now I need wine. But those dried up. Instead, I'd get radio silence until she rolled in around 6:30, sometimes later. Her explanations always sounded plausible. Staff meeting, one-on-ones, drama with parents. I believed her. She'd built up a lot of credit in the trust department. I didn't even blink when she mentioned that she'd be working late a couple nights a week, starting mid-February because 8th graders are maniacs during testing season. We still had dinner together, sure, but something shifted. She started wearing lipstick to school again. Coral. She hated coral. Said it made her look like a lifeguard. But suddenly, coral was back in rotation. I noticed. Didn't say anything. Then there were the workouts. Nancy never ran unless she was being chased by a bee, but now she was trying out the new cycling class at 5 a.m. 3 days a week. Now, I'm not an idiot. I watch enough TV and have done my fair share of jobs in homes where a cheating spouse got caught, usually involving a neighbor, a cousin, or someone from the PDA. I've heard the stories, but it's different when it's your life. You don't jump straight to she's cheating. You think, maybe she's stressed. Maybe she's going through something. Maybe it's menopause. You'd be surprised how often middle-aged men lean on menopause to explain anything slightly off in their marriages. The real kicker came one Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning out the garage, organizing some extension cords, when Nancy walked out holding her phone. She had that glazed, preoccupied look people get when they're only half listening. She told me she was going to meet a former student for coffee, one who had been having a hard time, and reached out of the blue. I said, "Sure, take your time." And she left in this rush, like she was late for something more important than saving a troubled teen. Now, I don't track my wife. Never have. But we share a Google Calendar for house stuff. Vet appointments, dentist visits, social obligations. A system Nancy herself insisted on because she couldn't deal with post-it notes on the fridge anymore. That night, while adding a reminder to buy new patio lights, I noticed she had deleted several entries for the previous week. Like, entirely removed them. Not rescheduled, deleted. Now, this is a woman who used to color code dentist cleanings. That was not normal. I still didn't want to jump to conclusions. But I was annoyed. So I brought it up. Casually. "Hey, did you delete your calendar stuff from last week?" Just noticed it was blank. She didn't even look up from the couch. Oh yeah, I cleared some things I didn't need. What? I shrugged. Just seemed odd. Usually you just move in. Do you need to know where I was, Daniel? That was the first time she'd ever spoken to me like that. Cold. Defensive. Her tone didn't match the words. It wasn't "I'm annoyed." It was "don't push me." I backed off. Said nothing. But I didn't forget it. A week later, I got a text from someone named Ian, a guy I did a couple small carpentry jobs for last summer. Nice enough guy. Taught chemistry at the same school where Nancy worked. Mid-30s, divorced, lived a few streets over. His message was brief. Hey Daniel. Not sure if you're still doing custom shelving, but I have a weird one. Might be fun. Let me know. I didn't want to go. Something about the timing rubbed me wrong. But business had been slow, and I figured a quick quote wouldn't hurt. I drove over that afternoon. Ian lived in one of those newly renovated townhomes. Neutral colors, industrial fixtures, a little too HGTV for my taste. He greeted me at the door, offered me coffee, and explained he wanted to convert one of his closets into a wine nook. I nodded along, making mental notes, but something felt off. Not with the project, with Ian. He seemed nervous. His eyes kept darting around, like he wanted to say something else, but couldn't. Then it happened. As I was measuring the wall, Ian said, Hey, listen. This is awkward, but I feel like I should say something. He looked like he was about to confess to a murder. I turned around. Okay. He rubbed the back of his neck. This is going to sound crazy, but I thought you guys were separated. I blinked. We're not. He paused. Right. That's what I figured when I saw your name pop up. I'm sorry, I wouldn't have if I'd known. If you'd known what, Ian? He looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him. I went out with Nancy. Twice. The room fell quiet. My tape measure dropped to the floor. I could hear the neighbor's lawn mower running outside, distant and mechanical. She told me she was recently separated, he said quickly. Said you were still living together for logistical reasons. I didn't ask too many questions. She was honest about not wanting anything serious. I stared at him. It didn't go far. Just drinks. A walk. It didn't feel right. That's why I never called her back. I couldn't decide what was worse, that she'd lied to this guy about our marriage, or that she was so casual about it she'd used me as a placeholder roommate in her personal soap opera. I told Ian to forget the project. Told him I wasn't mad at him. Which was true. The guy had no reason to lie. When I got back in the truck, I sat there for 10 full minutes, staring at my steering wheel, while the realization settled in. Nancy hadn't just been distant. She'd been building a parallel narrative. One where I didn't even exist. And that, my friend, was when the real story began. Want to hear what happened next? The weird thing about being cheated on, or starting to realize you're being cheated on, is how quickly your brain goes into detective mode. Not in a slick, cool Jason Bourne way, more like that guy from your neighborhood who records raccoons with a trail cam and thinks he's solving crimes. You start rethinking every memory, every car ride, every casual shrug. The whole relationship gets retrofitted with suspicion. The night after Ian dropped his little truth bomb, I didn't say a word to Nancy. I didn't slam doors or scroll her phone or accuse her in a blaze of glory. I made dinner, like I usually do on Wednesdays. Pork chops, mashed potatoes, frozen green beans. She ate like she hadn't been out on dates behind my back. Asked me about a leak in the guest bathroom. Laughed at a dumb TikTok. Kissed me goodnight like nothing was wrong. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling fan turning above our bed. I kept thinking, if she lied that easily to Ian, who else had she told? How many versions of me were out there in her alternate timeline? Deadbeat husband. Estranged roommate. Ex she was still working through things with. I didn't even know which character I was supposed to be in my own marriage anymore. The next morning, I didn't go to work. Called my clients, said I had the flu, which wasn't entirely untrue. I felt sick, just not in the viral sense. Nancy had a student intervention breakfast, something she'd apparently been attending once a month for the last 6 months, which now sounded more like code for an hour where I do something Daniel doesn't need to know about. So I did something I've never done before. I followed her. Yeah, I know it sounds shady, and I hate that I even considered it. But I wasn't tailing her with binoculars or hiding in bushes. I just left 5 minutes after she did, kept a couple car lengths behind, and told myself if she really was going to school, then fine. I'd go home, eat a breakfast sandwich, and apologize to myself for being paranoid. Only she didn't go to the school. She drove to a strip mall 10 minutes away and parked outside this place called Common Ground Cafe. It's this overpriced espresso joint where the baristas wear aprons and the menus in cursive font. I parked across the lot, near a vape shop, and watched her walk in. Coral lipstick, beige coat, phone in hand. Not looking around, like she'd done this 100 times. 15 minutes later, a man walked in. Not Ian. Taller, clean-shaven, navy blue pullover, khakis, that whole mid-level marketing manager who still lifts. Look. He smiled when he saw her. She smiled back, that tight, flirty smile she used to give me when I brought her lunch at work for no reason. I knew that smile. I hadn't seen it in months. They hugged, then sat, then leaned in like they were conspiring. I sat there in my truck with the air conditioning blasting in May, pretending I didn't want to drive the thing straight through the glass front. But here's the thing. I didn't need to barge in or cause a scene. I needed facts. I needed leverage. And more than anything, I needed to be sure, to know it wasn't just my own insecurity doing laps in my head. So I left, drove straight to the school district office, and asked for a visitor's badge. Let me pause here and explain something. Nancy works at Madison Trails Middle School. She's on the roster, has a staff ID, a parking spot. But here's the catch. The student intervention breakfasts? They're not a thing. Not official, anyway. I learned this from her coworker, Renee, who I ran into in the copy room while pretending to be lost. Oh, those? She said, raising an eyebrow. Nancy said they were with you. Excuse me? Yeah, Renee continued, stuffing papers into a folder. She told me you two were doing morning check-ins or marriage counseling or something. Honestly, I thought it was sweet. Sweet. I left that building so fast I forgot to return the badge. That night, I asked her how the intervention breakfast went. She barely looked up from her iPad. Same as always. It's like wrangling wild goats. 8th grade boys are the worst. I nodded slowly, watching her scroll Pinterest. How's Jessica doing? Jessica, the student. From last week. You said she broke down crying over her math scores. Nancy blinked. Oh, right. Yeah, she's okay now. I didn't push it. I just filed it away. Another brick in the wall. By the weekend, I was done playing passive. But I still didn't want to confront her empty-handed. That's when I got lucky. On Sunday, we were cleaning out the coat closet near the front door, or pretending to, mostly just shuffling jackets around, when I noticed something tucked behind the old shoebox of Christmas lights. A USB drive. Nothing labeled. Just sitting there like a souvenir from 2003. I slipped it in my pocket. Later, when she went out for groceries, I plugged it into my work laptop. Let me be clear, I wasn't expecting anything. Maybe old resumes. Maybe lesson plans. What I found instead made my stomach do a backflip. There was a folder titled Work Portfolio. Inside that, a subfolder titled Reference Letters. Inside that, photos. Hundreds of them. Not scandalous or explicit. Just revealing. Nancy and the navy pullover guy. Coffee dates. Parks. A museum. A hotel lobby. No, I didn't see a room key. Don't worry, I follow the rules. Selfies with her leaning her head on his shoulder, wearing that damn coral lipstick. One picture was from the county fair last fall, a day she told me she was volunteering at the animal shelter. There she was, laughing next to Mr. Pullover, holding a giant stuffed bear like they'd just won it together. I closed the laptop, sat back in my chair, and took a deep breath. The kind you take when you realize your entire marriage is a group project where you did all the work and someone else took all the credit. Now I had my proof. But I wasn't going to scream or cry or throw things. That's not who I am. Nancy played her cards quietly. So would I? But I'd make sure my hand was better. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called my old buddy Steve Carroll. Steve and I went to high school together, lost touch, then reconnected when I fixed his deck last fall. He works in IT, real IT, not, I can fix your printer, IT. He's the kind of guy who knows how to make data dance. I handed him the USB. Told him I needed metadata. Timestamps. Anything that could pin down the timeline. He looked at me like I'd just asked for a blood sample from a dragon. You sure you want to know all this? No, I said. But I need to. Steve did his magic. Within a day, I had dates, locations, file properties, everything. I now knew the affair started last August. I knew it was with a guy named Mitch Lawrence, a consultant for a local tech firm. Divorced. 2 kids. Drives a black Infiniti. He wasn't even some exciting out-of-town stranger. He was local, boring, safe, the human equivalent of a Target shoe aisle. That night, Nancy sat across from me on the couch, sipping tea and watching The Crown. She reached over, casually, and placed her hand on my knee, like nothing had changed, like she wasn't building a new life 2 miles away. And I smiled, because now I was ready. By the time I decided to confront Nancy, I'd already rehearsed the whole thing a dozen different ways in my head. That's what happens. You choreograph it like a courtroom drama. Imagine the lines, the gasps, the perfect mic drop exit. But reality, as usual, prefers Messier staging. I didn't want a dramatic ambush. I wanted clarity. I wanted to look her straight in the eye and see what version of Nancy would show up when the curtain fell. Would she lie? Would she panic? Would she fold? I chose a Thursday night. Not because anything poetic had ever happened on a Thursday, but because she always came home in a good mood on Thursdays. Wine tasting night with her wellness circle, which, of course, turned out to be one of her many camouflage phrases for, "I'll be with Mitch, don't wait up." I knew that now. I also knew she hadn't gone in 3 weeks. Not since I started watching. When she walked through the front door at 9:12 p.m. sharp, wearing that stupid beige coat she always claimed was too classy for this town, I was already sitting at the dining table. Laptop open. One folder on the screen. "Mitch." "Hey," she said, unbuttoning her coat like nothing in the world was even slightly on fire. "You're up late." "Yeah," I replied. Felt like organizing a few things. She walked past me toward the kitchen. "You want tea?" "Sure," I said, eyes still on the screen. "Get yourself one too. You'll want to sit for this." There was a beat of silence. Not hesitation, calculation. I could hear it. The microsecond pause between her casual rhythm and the realization that something in my tone was off. She came back holding 2 mugs. Set mine down. Then hers. Then slowly, cautiously, took the seat across from me. "What's going on?" I turned the laptop around. I didn't say a word. Just let her look. One click. Nancy and Mitch at the county fair, arm in arm, laughing. Another click. Same pair outside a building I later confirmed as Mitch's office. Another. Them in what looked suspiciously like the waiting area of a couple's spa. Her face didn't twist. She didn't cry. Didn't gasp. Her expression barely changed, just her breathing. Shallow. Controlled. The way you breathe when you're waiting for a test result you already know is bad. I finally broke the silence. "So, Mitch Lawrence." She stared at the photos like they were part of someone else's life. I leaned forward. "How long?" Still nothing. "Nancy, we're going to do this now. You owe me that much." Finally, she spoke. "It started last summer." I nodded. "Before or after our trip to Lake Geneva?" She hesitated. "Before." "Lovely." We had grilled corn on the cob by the lake while she was sneaking text messages to Mitch in the car, apparently. I remember that trip now with the fresh clarity of someone rereading a book with a different ending. "Why?" I asked. The question sounded simple. It wasn't. She looked down at her tea, stirred it without sipping. "I don't know." Wrong answer. "Try again." Nancy exhaled through her nose like I'd asked her to recite calculus. "I felt stuck," she said. "Like I was disappearing." Disappearing into what? A mortgage and date nights? A guy who remembers your coffee order and kills spiders? Her jaw tightened. "It wasn't about you," she said. "It was about me." "Of course it was," I snapped. "You did all this to me, but it was about you." She didn't flinch. "You stopped seeing me. That got my attention." "Excuse me." "You saw the house, the bills, the routines, but you stopped seeing me. I was becoming furniture." I sat back, took that in. Maybe she meant it. Maybe it was deflection. Probably both. I didn't disagree with all of it. Yeah, marriage can become a repetition drill. But I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't delete calendar invites to sneak out with a divorced wine sipper who probably calls podcasts audio journeys. "You could have told me," I said. "You could have said you were unhappy. I didn't want to hurt you." I laughed, loud enough to make her eyes flick up. "No, you just wanted to lie to me for a year and let him have access to the part of you that used to be mine, but gently. That's so much kinder." She looked wounded. "I didn't care." "Does he know you're still married?" I asked. "Yes." "Does he know you're still sleeping with your husband?" That shut her up. Because the answer was yes. We'd sleep twice in the last 3 months. Not amazing, not passionate, but not dead either. Married people know what I mean. "I didn't plan this," she said. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. No one plans betrayal. They just step into it slowly and decide the water's nice. I paced a few steps, then turned back toward her. I know everything, Nancy. I know about the pictures, the schedule changes, the cafe. Ian, your lies to your coworkers. I've got more metadata than the FBI. She stared at me. You've been spying on me? I almost laughed again. Don't try to flip this. You created the lie. I just noticed the cracks. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, quieter, so what happens now? That question hit harder than I expected. Because here's the thing, I didn't know. I'd imagined this moment so many times, and yet the end result was never clear. What does a betrayed husband do when the mask finally drops? Kick her out? File papers? Set fire to her lemon trees? I did none of those. I just said, you're going to pack a bag and go stay with your sister for a few days. She looked shocked. You're kicking me out. I raised my eyebrows. Would you like me to stay somewhere else while you recover from your affair? She stood, moved toward the hallway, paused. I didn't fall in love with him, she said, without looking back. Cool, I replied. Neither did I. She left the room, and for the first time in 11 years, the house actually felt quiet. Not peaceful, not calm, just quiet. Like the part of the movie where the music cuts and you're left sitting in the dark, waiting for what comes next. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, sat on the back porch, listened to the neighbors' wind chimes, and wondered how many people around me were living similar lies. Probably more than you'd think. But me? I wasn't going to sit in the quiet for long. Nancy thought I was going to be the guy who sulked, who simmered, who maybe forgave. She was wrong. The next part was coming, and she wasn't going to see it coming. The next morning, Nancy was gone. Her side of the closet still looked mostly untouched, but the overnight bag by the bedroom door had disappeared. Probably at her sister's place, or maybe with Mitch, if he wasn't too busy explaining his new logistics partner to his kids. I didn't care. What mattered was that the house felt like mine again. Heavy, sure, but mine. Now, I'm not a vengeful guy by nature. I don't slash tires, I don't shout at people in public, and I don't believe in eye for an eye nonsense. But this wasn't about revenge for the sake of it. This was about justice. Fair, surgical, no drama justice. You see, I knew something about Nancy that she never thought would matter. Something she'd told me offhandedly over the years, assuming I wasn't really listening. Nancy had applied for the assistant principal position at her school. It was a big deal, a promotion she'd been chasing for over a year, and one she was a strong candidate for. More money, more prestige. She was practically salivating for it. There'd been rumors she was a lock for it once the current AP left for his new district job in June. But there was one catch. The district had a strict conduct and disclosures clause tied to administrative positions. Relationships between staff and consultants, especially those not declared through proper HR channels. Yeah, big, fat policy violation. And guess who was a district-approved external consultant for the Community Technology Outreach Program? That's right, Mr. Mitch Lawrence, the very man she was sneaking around with. Nancy had left just enough digital breadcrumbs to sink her own ship. Emails, texts, the metadata from those photos, all time-stamped during school hours, some geotagged in locations she definitely shouldn't have been in if she were working. If the school board got hold of that, she wouldn't just lose the promotion. She might lose her job entirely. But here's the thing, I didn't want her fired. That would be messy, public, sympathy-inducing. I wanted something cleaner, smarter. The kind of hit that made her sit alone at her sister's kitchen table and realize, slowly, painfully, just how badly she'd underestimated me. So I started with Mitch. I didn't contact him directly. That would have been giving him the benefit of feeling important. Instead, I found out where he worked, a mid-sized firm contracted by the school district for digital curriculum consulting. He had one of those overly polished LinkedIn profiles with words like synergy and visionary leader. I created a new Gmail account. No name, no trace. Just a burner with the subject line, question about conflict of interest. The body of the email was short and polite, exactly how corporate people prefer their threats. Hello. I was recently made aware that a contracted consultant may be involved in a romantic relationship with a current staff member at Madison Trails Middle School. As this could represent a conflict of interest under district policy, I wanted to pass along some documentation in case it had not yet been disclosed. Attached are screenshots of the relevant materials. Thank you for your time. I attached a few carefully chosen images, nothing explicit. just enough to suggest overlap. Mitch and Nancy walking into the staff-only building on a Friday afternoon, a time-stamped coffee meetup during school hours. The kind of material that gets forwarded in HR Slack channels with the phrase, "We should probably get ahead of this." I sent it to 3 people: the head of HR at his firm, the district superintendent, and the Madison Trails ethics compliance officer. BCC, of course. Within 48 hours, I got what I wanted. Mitch was suspended pending a review, which, in corporate speak, is the beginning of the end. But that wasn't the real win. The real win came the next weekend. Nancy came home. It wasn't an emotional reunion. She didn't walk in tearful or defensive, just tired. She looked tired. Same beige coat, same expression of forced control. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door, looked around the living room like it was a crime scene, then turned to find me sitting at the dining table. "I just need to grab a few more things," she said. I nodded. "Take your time." She went down the hall. I waited. Then, just as she passed the kitchen on her way back, arms full of shoes and some kind of fancy skincare kit, I said, "Did you hear about Mitch?" She stopped, didn't turn around, didn't speak. I continued, casually. Suspended from the outreach program. Some concern about ethics violations. Now she turned. Slowly. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I said, shrugging. "Someone sent some documentation to the district. Photos. Emails. You know, normal stuff." "You sent them," she said, her voice low and shaky. "I might have forwarded a couple things. But hey, you and Mitch were real sloppy. Left your whole affair out in the open like a group project. I just organized it." Her lips parted like she wanted to scream, but she didn't. She knew better. "And here's the best part," I added. "The school board's meeting next week to finalize the assistant principal hire. You're still on the list, right?" She stepped closer. "You're trying to ruin me." I laughed. "No, Nancy. I'm just making sure you don't win after cheating your way through the game." She stood there, clutching her overpriced shoes, looking like a woman who'd finally realized the Titanic wasn't unsinkable after all. Then I twisted the knife. "You told your coworkers I was in counseling with you, right? All those fake marriage breakfasts? I wonder what they'll think when I send them a very real apology email, letting them know I was never there, and that you've been fabricating mental health appointments for over 6 months. "Don't," she whispered. I held up my phone. "Already drafted. Just haven't hit send." She turned and walked toward the door, every step echoing like it was her last on familiar ground. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the look on her face that night I found the photos. The casual way she said, "You stopped seeing me." Like I was the reason she turned our marriage into a lie. Like I was supposed to nod along while she gave herself permission to cheat. So no, I didn't feel sorry. As the door clicked shut behind her, I finally let myself breathe. And then I made one more move. I posted on Facebook. Nothing dramatic. No rage. Just a clean, precise little note. "Hi friends. Just a quick update. Nancy and I have decided to separate. We're handling things privately and respectfully, but I wanted to let folks know we'll no longer be attending events as a couple. Please respect our privacy as we move through this transition." Comments poured in. Some people messaged me. Others offered support. Nancy's friends, the yoga moms, the Pinterest decorators, the ones who fawned over our perfect marriage, went silent. She'd have to explain it to them now, over and over. Each version of the story a little more twisted, a little more hollow. And the best part? I never once raised my voice. Never said a cruel word. I didn't need to. Sometimes, the smartest revenge isn't burning everything down. It's letting the liar sit alone in the ashes. Nancy asked to meet the following Tuesday. She didn't text. She called, the old-fashioned way, like it was 2007 and she still knew how to be direct. I let it ring twice before answering. Didn't want to seem too available. "Hey," I said flatly. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice careful, like she was trying not to wake a sleeping bear. I paused. "Sure." She offered to meet at the park halfway between our house and her sister's. The same park where we used to take Sunday walks, before brunch and before the reality of 2 people growing in opposite directions. I got there early, sat on the bench by the duck pond. Watched a dad try to convince his kid not to throw a Hot Wheels car into the water. The kid did it anyway. That about summed up marriage, didn't it? Nancy showed up right on time. Hair tied back. No makeup. Dressed like a person who didn't want to be seen. which was a major change from the woman who used to coordinate her lipstick with her coffee thermos. She sat beside me, but left a good foot of space between us. Neither of us said anything for a few seconds. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't think you'd come." I kept my eyes on the pond. "I figured you earned at least one clean conversation." She looked down. "Thanks." More silence. "I guess you've been busy," she said, trying for lightness but missing the mark by a mile. "You could say that," I replied. "Between clients and helping destroy a consultant's career?" "Yeah, full schedule." She winced. "You didn't have to go that far." "Oh, I didn't go far," I said calmly. "Far would have been contacting the local news." I stayed well within the reasonable betrayed husband radius. She nodded slowly, taking that one on the chin. "I wasn't in love with him," she said. "You told me that already." "It's true." I turned to look at her. "I don't care if it was love or boredom or your astrological sign. The point is, you lied. Repeatedly. You turned our life into your alibi." She looked like she wanted to argue, then thought better of it. "Do you still hate me?" "Hate takes energy," I said. "I'm reserving mine for people who matter." That one stung. Good. She needed it to sting. She nodded, biting the inside of her cheek like she always did when she was holding back tears. "I miss the quiet," she said softly. I raised an eyebrow. "The quiet." "The mornings." "The routine." "You making coffee while I got dressed." "The little ways we moved around each other." It's like muscle memory I still have, even though I'm not there anymore. She looked over at me. I didn't expect it to feel this empty. Was it worth it? She blinked. "Mitch." "Everything." She looked down at her hands. "No." I believed her. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "You had the real thing, Nancy. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. You threw it away for a temporary high, a side plot you thought wouldn't get messy. And you thought I'd never notice. That's the part that still floors me. You really thought I was that blind." "I didn't think." "Exactly," I cut in. "You didn't think. You just did." She took a shaky breath. "What happens now?" "Now?" The question that always comes too late. "I've talked to a lawyer," I said. "We're going through mediation. No court. No drama. We split the house. I keep the truck. You keep the Subaru. I already made an inventory of everything. You'll get a copy tomorrow." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "I'm not doing the whole back and forth. We're adults. We file the paperwork, we move on. If you want to fight about who gets the blender, go hire someone who enjoys wasting time." She nodded, her expression unreadable. "What about the people?" she asked quietly. "What people?" "Everyone. Your family. My friends. The neighborhood." I looked at her like she'd just asked what oxygen was. "They'll figure it out. Or they won't. Not my problem. I'm not issuing a press release." She smiled sadly. "You always were good at knowing when to care." I stood up. "I don't need you to validate me, Nancy. I needed you to not betray me." That ship sailed. She stood too, brushing her coat flat like it mattered. "I do regret it," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "But not in time." She looked around the park. It was almost empty now. Just the kid from earlier, crying because the Hot Wheels was gone forever. Poetic, really. As I turned to leave, she called after me. "Daniel." I stopped. "I hope you meet someone who sees you. For real." I glanced back. "I hope you meet someone who doesn't have to lie to be interesting." I didn't wait for a reply. I walked back to my truck, opened the door, and sat for a minute before starting it. The engine hummed to life like nothing had changed. But everything had, and I was good with that. It's been 4 months since that final conversation in the park. Funny how fast you can untangle 11 years of marriage when one person has already burned half the rope. We finalized the paperwork last week. Mediation went as smooth as something like that could go. There were no shouting matches, no courtroom drama, no surprises, just two people dividing up their shared life like they were splitting groceries. She took the KitchenAid mixer, I took the cast iron pans. She got the guest bedroom furniture, I kept the grill. Nobody cried. Nobody begged. The divorce was as numb as the last year of our marriage had been. She moved out officially in June. I gave her 2 days to pack up her things. I wasn't there. I took the truck and went to my brother's cabin for the weekend. When I came back, her stuff was gone. Her smell wasn't. That took a few more weeks to fade, and even now I'll catch a hint of that almond conditioner she used if the air hits the hallway just right. Ghosts are like that. They don't knock, they just linger. For the record, Mitch didn't last. Not even 6 weeks after she moved out, he was out of the picture. A friend of hers, one of those double agents who pretends to be Switzerland in a split, Let it slip over a glass of wine that Mitch got cold feet once things became real. Translation: he liked cheating with her, not building a life with her. Cowards love the thrill of the affair, but rarely want the responsibility of the aftermath. Nancy hasn't tried to come back. Not really. Oh, she sent a few texts, neutral ones, the kind that pretend to be logistical. Do you know where we stored the tax docs from 2021? Just checking to see if you got the mail forwarding fixed. Hope you're doing well. I've responded when necessary. Polite. Short. Final. I'm not angry anymore. Just done. There's a difference. At first, the silence was strange. I'd spent over a decade hearing someone else's footsteps in the morning, someone else's toothbrush rattling in the holder, someone else's voice humming along to 90s songs in the shower. When that stopped, it felt like the world had dimmed. I missed the noise, even if most of it had been fake toward the end. But then something interesting happened. The quiet stopped being lonely. It started feeling good. You rediscover things after betrayal. You remember who you are without someone else constantly shaping the corners of your personality. I started waking up early again. Not because Nancy needed the car or wanted me to make toast, but because I wanted to walk the trail behind our neighborhood while it was still cool and the birds were yelling at each other. I repainted the living room. Got rid of the dull beige she'd insisted on. Went with a deep navy. Added new shelves, upgraded the light fixtures, even built a small reading nook by the window. It turns out a house breathes better when it's honest. I also reconnected with people. Turns out when your wife cheats on you, people either disappear or show up with beer and a story about how their cousin went through something similar. I weeded out the sympathy suckers and stuck with the real ones. My buddy Clay, who I hadn't seen since pre-pandemic, showed up with a six-pack and told me I needed to get back into league softball. You need to hit something that doesn't bleed, he said. Sound advice. I didn't date. Not right away. There's this myth that men move on quickly, that we jump from one bed to another like it's an Olympic event. Maybe some do. Not me. I needed time. Not to mourn her. I had done enough of that while still married, but to detox from the version of myself I had been with her. You don't realize how much you compromise until the compromise is gone. I'd been smaller around Nancy, shrinking to fit the space she allowed. I'd dulled my edges to keep things smooth. Now, I was sharpening back up. Then, one Saturday, I walked into a hardware store for a drill bit and came out with a phone number. Her name was Erin, manager at the store, mid-30s, wicked sense of humor and a look in her eyes like she's already done the math on most people. She helped me find the right tool, then casually joked that I looked like a man who didn't read instruction manuals. I mostly go by vibes, I said. She laughed. And here I thought you guys were supposed to be good with tools. I'm great with tools, I replied. Terrible with people. That earned a smile. I left with the bit, and later that night, I called the store, under the excuse that I had a question about the product. She answered. We talked. One thing led to another. We've gone out 3 times since then. Nothing serious. Just drinks, walks, some genuinely good conversation. No expectations. No lies. She knows I'm recently divorced. I didn't give her the full saga. She didn't ask. But she did say something that stuck with me on our second date. You seem like someone who had the wind knocked out of him, but didn't fall. Yeah, that's exactly it. Nancy and I don't talk anymore. I heard from that same mutual friend that she's taking time to focus on herself, which is code for licking her wounds and spinning a narrative where she's the victim of a loveless marriage she bravely walked away from. Whatever helps her sleep. As for me, I'm doing all right. Business is steady. I started a blog, nothing fancy, just handyman tips and some stories about fixing broken things. Funny how much that overlaps with personal recovery. I kept the house. Even planted new lemon trees in the backyard. Not because I love lemons, but because I refuse to let her have them as a symbol. That space is mine now. Sometimes I think about what might have happened if I hadn't caught her. If Ian hadn't sent that text. If I hadn't found the USB. If I just kept swallowing the weirdness and pretending things were fine. It's terrifying how close you can come to wasting your whole life for the sake of keeping things comfortable. But that's the thing. Comfort can be a trap. It lulls you into silence. Trains you to ignore the way someone's eyes don't meet yours anymore. Teaches you that fine is good enough. I'm done with fine. I want sharp. I want honest. I want a life that doesn't require me to dim anything to make someone else shine. Nancy taught me that. Unintentionally, but still. And that's the last gift she gave me. A clear look at who I don't want to be anymore. So here I am, standing on the other side of it. Still a little bruised, but lighter. Still healing, but fully mine again. And ready, finally, for whatever's next. Subscribe to the channel